name's Phyllis Robinson Hawley, and I've lived here most of my life, except for about maybe 10 years. First school I went to was back in 1950, and I went to the Hollington School, which I can remember Mrs. Cadden was our teacher, and that year one of my cousins started in kindergarten, Carol Milks, and she taught between kindergarten and 4th grade, and on the other side was Mr. Joe Santa Lucia. He taught 5th through 8th. Then after that they went to Binghamton or Vestal high schools. There was only 2 of us in 1st grade, and that was Reed Thomas and myself. And we had a girls' outhouse and a boys' outhouse. Of course, another cousin and I'd go home with the Milks girls and have lunch up there. And Mrs. Cadden would always say, whose lunches are back on the table? And we always acknowledged that it was ours. Not much. I mean, we mostly stayed home. The house that I live in, my father and both of my grandfathers helped build it. So, and now I'm living in it. I joined the Historic Society, and I've learned a lot of stuff about Hollington that I never knew. That at one time we had creameries, and we had, oh dear, we had sawmills and cheese factory, yes, and we had theater and
Inns?
Oh yeah, hotels. They were hotels back then. Is what they were called. And in fact, the one hotel is still standing. It's where Bob and Lorena Van Voorst used to live up here. And there was a big flood in 1909 that wiped everything out, just about. So, of course, now we're down to a little town. I went, well, after Hollington School, I went to Park Terrace School for 2 years, and then I went back to Hollington. Then I went to what we used to call Thomas School, and then I went over to Pierce Creek. Finally, I went to East Junior for 2 years before they built the new high school in Susquehanna Valley. I was one of the first graduating out of there. So, I really, pardon?
That sounds good.
I really don't have much else.
That was wonderful.
Just raising my kids.
I personally have a fascination with your knowledge of the Cadden's farm and the spring on the hill and how it comes down and goes under the road and watered the cattle and all that.
Well,
Talk a little bit about that, because that's unusual.
John Cadden told me that there's a spring that is in back of the house, and it comes under that back road, goes up into the house. They have a big tank up in, I don't know if it's one of the rooms upstairs or maybe the attic, and the overflow is used in the house. Then the rest of the overflow goes down. It'll go across the front lawn, under the main road, Hollington Road, into the barn, up into a tank, which waters the cows. And that overflow goes into the milk house, which goes out into a water drop, and that goes out into the ditch.
That's incredible.
You can't imagine people thinking this stuff up back then, but they were farmers. I mean, they had to think these things up. And so...
And whereabouts is that? That's on Hollington Road, but...
Cadden's Farm, which is just up the road a couple mile and a half. And I can remember them leaving the cows out in what they used to call the barnyard. And of course they go out to water get water at that time, I believe. So, and we're the house next door to them. I believe John's grandfather used to own it until it burned. And then there was Trips in there, and Mrs. Gould, and I don't know who the new owner is now. But there's a lot of history here that I'm just finding out myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating.
It is.
So,
Is that Cadden Farm on the corner of Milks Road?
no,
It's
they're the
before
ones
that, isn't it?
next up.
After.
Not only that, I believe on where Cadden's house is, there used to be a hotel there.
Mm-hmm.
It was Philip Cadden's hotel, or Union Hotel, I believe. We had at one time 6 hotels in the area,
I had no idea.
and the stagecoaches went
Mhm.
through and up Milks's Road and on over and right out to Montrose.
Mm-hmm.
That was the turnpike.
But Hollington Road used to be up Park Avenue,
Really?
came up Park Avenue and out. And then they built the new road, which they called the new road back then. And comes out from Pennsylvania Avenue, and once we cross the border, they call it Hollington Road. Once you cross the Pennsylvania border, it's Hollington Turnpike. At one time, there used to be a toll bridge down by the city line, and because farmers didn't have much money and didn't want to pay for the tolling, that they would take and come up the creek, which is down over the bank,
Mm-hmm.
until they hit where they didn't have to pay, where they could get up onto a good road. So, yeah.